episode, we're talking all about surgical robotics. First, we're going to hear from Per Vergaard-Nurseth. He is the CEO of CMR Surgical. CMR has commercialized a surgical robotic system. We'll learn about it a little bit later. They also recently raised $600 million for a Series D round. So Per comes to CMR from the robotics industry. He's not a medtech guy. This is his first job in medtech, so he brings a very interesting perspective. Later on, we'll hear from Adam Sachs. Adam is the CEO and co-founder of Vicarious Surgical. We spoke with Adam last year, and a lot has happened since then. They went public, Vicarious went public through a SPAC, leaving, according to Adam, once the deal is done, Vicarious will have over $400 million to put to work, and they're doing that. They're bringing in senior talent. They've moved into a cool new headquarters, and they have lots going on. So we'll reconnect with Adam Sachs later. Trying to remember when we spoke last, and it seemed like 3 months ago. It was actually last August, and I encourage everyone to go back to our August device talks to get the sort of phase one of the Vicarious story. But a lot has happened since August. At the time, I thought you were sort of just this rising robotics upstart, and then I see the SPAC deal, and now you've got headquarters and a full executive team. It's just you're traveling at warp speed right now. Did you anticipate all of this happening? We'll go over each item individually, but what's this year like been for you?
Well, and first of all, it's really incredible that it's been almost a full year since we last talked. It's been an amazing year for us, as you rightly pointed out. Did I anticipate this? I think is what the question.
That was the question, yeah.
Yeah, anticipate is, I'd say, not the word I'd use, right? It's, you always build for this to happen, right? None of it happens by accident. It happens because we all built it. But, this is of course, what we'd all been hoping for and building towards. So I feel incredibly privileged to be where we are now and be able to take our company public for bring in almost $500 million of proceeds so that we can fund our journey all the way through clearance and commercialization.
Well, I do encourage folks to go back and listen to our August podcast, but I know many folks are on a treadmill or out walking their dog, and it's hard to find those old episodes when you're on your phone. So let's do them let's help them out by telling them a bit about the Vicarious surgical approach. Your robotic surgery company, obviously, we talked in the last podcast about the legacy systems that are in place, Intuitive and such. How is Vicarious different than those?
So it really comes down to our robotic actuators with, legacy multi-incision surgical robots. They have something called coupled motion in the actuators. So that coupled motion essentially means that each of the joints, when you move them, moves the other joints as well, and you need to correct that in software. Most of what we spent the last 7 years inventing and developing into a product is these decoupled actuators that allows us to architect a different system where we no longer have this exponential buildup of force. So that lets us go from just a wrist inside the abdomen with legacy systems to 9 degrees of freedom inside the abdomen with our robot. We fully mimic wrists, elbows, and shoulders of the surgeon and do all of that through a single 15 millimeter incision, a normal laparoscopic incision.
Wow. That's outstanding. So when we talked, give us you were preclinical at the time. I believe you are still preclinical as far as I know, but give us an update on the state of your robot on a regulatory fashion and a development fashion. We'll talk about the advances that the company has made next.
Yeah, so I, the way I like to think about it is we're about 7 years into a 9-year journey to market here. We are a bit over 2 years away from the regulatory filing. We're still doing kind of our final beta, our initial beta units, finalizing that design, all of the features. The way I really like to phrase that is it's more like the product looks and feels like our product will when we launch, but it has a lot of rough edges that really matter a lot in surgery, right? Surgeons are rightly the most demanding customers in the world, and they demand perfection from their instruments. So we're taking the next year to do that, and then the year after will be about V&V getting the appropriate data as required by the FDA and proving out that our device is safe and effective. And we'll be submitting the filing in late 2023.
So let's talk about your SPAC. How did that come to play? We've seen a stream of them. You're not the only one that's been able to use that vehicle to go public. It's taken some very interesting companies. Again, some were, I thought, earlier stage, but some that had products in the market. I'd love to understand how that came together. I imagine they approached you. I imagine I would love to know what was the process after they approached you, and how did you decide that this was the right move for your company at this time?
Yeah, so SPACs have a really interesting place in the world where they, really bring a SPAC sponsor who has cash in trust that is the SPAC, but also, experience from that SPAC sponsor. And they can actually take that experience, bring it to your company and use it to not only support you once post-merger, but help diligence when they're on the buy side pre-merger. So it's enabled companies like ours that we really feel is kind of the perfect example of a SPACable company. Mm-hmm. Is a company that spent 7 years developing the technology, would probably be going public via conventional IPO in a year from now, has good use for a very large amount of capital. And actually needs that capital to develop, has all the upside that warrants the investment. And it allows, that SPAC sponsor, D8 in our case, to come in, use their robotics expertise, their network. They've sent surgeon after surgeon to come visit our facility and talk with us and due diligence, and sent an expert that led one of our competitors' commercial efforts to come try our system, and they can then stand on all that diligence to the rest of the market and the rest of the community.
But you had raised money from some great names, Bill Gates, Jerry Yang, Vinod Khosla. You had funding. You could have gone, I think, raised a lot more on the private side. What was it that made you decide that the public markets is where you wanted to go? Was this an investor decision? Was this a company decision to go public through the SPAC?
Yeah, it was very much a company decision, but our investors were incredibly supportive of it. At the end of the day, it's not just about the capital. It's also about the visibility, having these conversations, being able to communicate to the world what we're doing and attract. We've already had incredible inbound interest from hospital surgeons that want to partner with us to help us build our technology. We'll be hiring a few hundred people at our Waltham office over the next 2 years, and it's been awesome inbound interest. We've hired a few dozen in I believe the last 2 months alone. So it's there are huge advantages to being a public company beyond the capital that comes with it.
It was interesting to me that you said you would be filing for regulatory approval probably or in 2 years, but your financial timeline had you perhaps going public through conventional means within 2 years. I've been covering this industry for a while, and I still have in my head that, you need to have revenue, you need to have 100 million in revenue to even start talking about an IPO. Were you having conversations with investment banks as a possible IPO target in a year or two? Had you thought that far ahead on the public market part of things? So,
I'd say early conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd say it was sort of the plan of record. I totally agree that the convention in the medtech industry has always been to go public when you're a commercial stage company, but it's pretty unique to our industry, right? Pharma and biotech go significantly before approval.
Yep.
Tech companies go significantly before approval. So we actually did a deep dive in to try to understand the reasons for that. And, I think that there's really two reasons that are closely tied together. First is medtech companies do not typically need a few $100 million in order to get commercial. Most medtech devices take $30 million and are aiming for a $300 million exit, are not trying to grow into a $100 billion company. I think that that really is the biggest piece of the reason. But the second piece of the reason is the valuation. And that, if you took one of those conventional med tech companies that has a potential $300 million exit opportunity public before they were commercial, it'd be a super micro cap company, wouldn't be able to get the coverage, wouldn't be able to get the interest and have these conversations. And it's, a tough spot to be in. Whereas we have the privilege of, needing the capital, but then having the rewards at the end that justify all of it.
Interesting. And going back to the SPAC process, I kind of took you off track there, but it really sounds like it was more of the due diligence associated. It was almost more of a venture due diligence where they really kicked the tires, took them off, put them back on, kicked them again. Were really thorough in bringing in people to evaluate your technology. And when you do go public with an IPO, you usually put your executive team in place beforehand. You're building your team out now, which I think is great, and we'll go over that in a minute. But did it feel very much like a venture sort of deal, or did it feel different than that?
diligence that they did was, I'd say, the deepest diligence out of any round that's happened by far. So it was, I'd say, like a venture deal and then some. And that's part of the sponsor in a SPAC has to actually put up some of their own capital as part of the deal. And that's, they really, and on top of that, they care about their reputations. They brought in some really reputable surgeons and physicians, David Ho, and, very prominent, physician is also on their board of directors. So it's been, they really do and care about making the right choice in the company that they're partnering with and merging with. So the diligence process was incredibly deep. The other beauty of it is, unlike the regular IPO process, there's kind of not this issue of material non-public information with the SPAC sponsor. They're over the wall and they stay over the wall. So they can do all of this diligence that other investors in a conventional process would not be able to do.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that. So let us talk about your executive team. You've hired a new CFO, a new counsel. Tell us a bit about them, and are you still building that C-level team out?
I think we have an amazing team today. We're a growing company. We're always building out our team. I tend to like to tell people internally, right? If you've ever feel like you've built out everything you need, then you're probably stagnant, right? You're probably not growing. You should be continuing to build always. That being said, I love our team internally. They're amazing. Bill Kelly is our CFO. June Morris is our GC and Chief Legal Officer. Both of them come out of, amazing previous public companies in the medical devices space, have deep experience in, frankly, these exact roles, which is really helpful as we go through the complex regulatory environment, financial environment, deal with investors and analysts and all of that. And then the rest of our executive team, we have some, amazing people who are really split between hardcore robotics experience and expertise in medical devices.
What about yourself? You're now the CEO of a publicly held company. You've got a massive headquarters. You're going to hire a couple hundred people. When I talked to you last, you felt, I guess I assigned you more the role of, technology expert, startup CEO. But when you get into the operational, the building of things, that's when you sort of bring someone in who has, quote unquote, done it before. Now, granted, this is a newish company. I don't know if it's been done before, but how do you sort of morph from startup CEO to operational CEO, or do you see it that way at all?
I'd like to think of myself still as a startup CEO and always a startup CEO, because again, I think it is about that growth mentality, right? You kind of, as soon as you're a purely operational CEO, it's probably time to step aside and let someone else run the company who's ready to drive growth again. So I very much believe that that's a key part of the mindset that, enables our company to be on this incredible trajectory that we've been on. That being said, I of course respect and appreciate the experience that others bring, and that's why we've hired an incredible executive team. We also brought on an incredible executive chairman to our board, and have built out our board of directors. Our exec chairman, David Styka, for a long time ran the entire kind of operational side of Auris Health all the way. So they were acquired by J&J for $6 billion. So,
that's right.
And he nominally is supposed to be spending about a day a week at our company, but it's been far more than that, especially over the last 6 months. So, I guess I'm really just trying to say, as much as I think that a growth mindset is awesome and key, I think surrounding yourself by amazing individuals who have done it before is also incredibly important.
That's great. I'm sure the startup CEOs listening to this will appreciate that insight. Let's talk about the headquarters. If I Googled correctly, I believe you've moved into Boston Dynamics old headquarters. Is that correct?
Yeah. I like to think of it as our new headquarters, but
that's a better way to look at it.
Old headquarters, but yes is the answer.
They did okay though. So I mean. Yeah, no, you're kind of at the epicenter of robotics. So what does it look like now? Did they leave anything behind for you, an old sofa perhaps, or is it an empty space and you're in the process of sort of starting from scratch? What does the facility look like now?
They left out a facility that was built out very well for robotics. They were perfectly happy to not do additional construction to, turn it back into normal office space. So, we've been pretty lucky in that respect. This facility will hold, a few hundred people, and, we are likely to continue to grow in the area. That all being said, we also did a very significant build out an operating room and laboratory space specifically for the medical side of what we're doing. And we're in the process of building out a clean room for manufacturing on site as well. So, they left, I'd say, a great setup and a great shell that we've, of course, in order to be a medical robotics company, had to significantly build out. Our operating room is incredible.
Yeah. That's great. No atlases or spots roaming around though. They took them all with them, right?
Yeah, I wish they would have left one or two.
What is our next step for you now? We talked about the regulatory approval in a couple of years from now. How do you get to that point, and where are you on the financial side of things? I imagine you're set for a while. What does that side of the business look like for you?
Yeah. So once we close the transaction, assuming no redemptions, it'll be a ballpark of about $430 million on our balance sheet after expenses from the transaction. That sets us up incredibly well, not just to do the final development, but also the initial commercialization. I'd say, by our financial model actually gets us all the way to cash flow positive, although I really like to emphasize to people that, that's not always the goal. Sometimes taking additional capital in order to go faster and really hit the gas a few years from now is sometimes the right answer. But with that caveat, we are very well set up to be able to execute. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Well, when we concluded our last podcast, you invited me down to visit the headquarters once we're able to get out and about. So I'm going to hold that to you in your new headquarters as well.
Please do. I'll hold
you to that. Sorry, I don't know why.
I would not recommend also visiting the old headquarters unless you want, an empty shell that's available for lease. But
I'm all set in that regard, but I hope we can come down and take a look around once you're all moved in.
We come on by. We'd love to have you.
Excellent. Adam, thanks so much for the time and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
It's always a pleasure, Tom.